Bledsoe was arrested.
Patrick Montgomery was in court.
Jonathan Manapa will stay in federal custody.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So 66-year-old Texas resident Dana Bell traveled to D.C. with her adult daughter, and she was seen maneuvering to the front of the police line on the Capitol grounds. She started shaking the barricades. Then she flipped them off, which you're going to see this is a theme throughout the day, and she screamed at them, "Fuck you." She's a pleasant little Southern belle, ain't she? So eventually, that police line collapsed. The officers were forced all the way back to the Capitol. So Bell followed the mob. She was seen outside the East Rotunda doors, which were under attack, as I've mentioned, from the inside and the outside. So people who had broken in, other members of Trump's mob, had gained access through other means, through other doors, through other windows. And so then they would go over and they would try to force the doors open from the inside over at the East Rotunda. So that was going on the inside. These people are trying to force the doors open from the inside. The mob on the outside is fighting with the few officers that were out there trying to get in. So during one of these incidents, the Rotunda door was open. One of them was pushed open from the inside, and Bell grabbed the door. She tried to keep it open. So an officer on the outside tried to push the door closed, but the mob was so overwhelming, he got trapped behind the door and the wall of the Capitol. So another officer tried to help him, and then that officer became trapped, and he briefly lost consciousness because someone in the crowd shot him directly in the face with pepper spray. So that officer testified that he was maced in the eye, he was exhausted and beaten, and he was saying, they were all taking a pummeling, there weren't enough of them, they were outnumbered. He said, I ended up falling to the ground, I couldn't see, somebody was trying to take his baton. And so he saw then that there was another officer pinned, and so he tried to help him, he tried to get over to him, but unfortunately got pinned between the door and the wall himself, and he just couldn't breathe at a certain point. He was worried that people were going to take his gun, and so then he started to feel like he was going to black out, and he ended up doing just that. He ended up, losing consciousness for a period of time. So the officer confirmed he did end up, like I said, passing out, and he said, it is a small miracle that I wasn't trampled or murdered with my own weapon. The things that were going through my head, was I going to make it? What if someone did get my gun? Would my fellow officers be killed? So it was at that moment when this man is at his weakest, he's fearing for his life, Bell took advantage of these officers suffering, and she entered the Capitol. So she was seen raising her arm, she was celebrating. She first headed into the Capitol Rotunda. She picked up and chucked one of those metal stanchions that you've seen probably in videos and photos from that day. Chucked it across the floor. From there, she walked through various parts of the building. She ended up just outside the speaker's lobby. And Ashley Babbitt had just been shot. And the officers were trying to save her life. And so they were telling the mob, you got to move back, you got to give us space. Well, the mob wasn't following their very polite requests. So one officer yelled at them and said, quote, "Get the fuck back, get out." Instead of leaving, though, Bell moved closer to the police and Babbitt, and she pointed at the officer who cursed at them, and she starts screaming at him and swearing at him. So the prosecutor said she went on this tirade for about a full minute, and then she directed her ire at another officer. This other officer was pleading with the mob to please go so that they could get to Babbitt. So Bell was seen on video. She got within inches of that officer. She's pointing at him. She yells at him, "Fuck you." She kind of directed it at him and the other officers, and then she flipped them all off as well. And then even after she moved away from the officers, she remained nearby. She was still in the building. So by that time, reinforcements had arrived. Additional police officers arrived. They started physically forcing everyone towards the exits. Well, as Bell was walking with the mob, she's yelling at the officers, quote, "Don't fucking touch me." And then at one point she stopped, she turned towards an officer and she flipped him off and said, quote, "Y'all suck. I used to back you guys my whole life till 2 weeks ago." Then Bell refused to move any further, so an officer put his baton sideways and he starts pushing her forward. So she turns around, she screams at him, quote, "Stop fucking pushing me." And then she yells at him again, says, "Don't touch me again." And as she's moving down the hallway, she called another officer a, quote, "fucking pussy traitor," and also the C word, which I can't say or I'll get demonetized. So then she stops in front of another officer, an officer named Smith. She got close to his face. She pointed at his face and she said, quote, "Get a real job. Get a real job. We don't support y'all anymore. No one supports you now. Nobody." So Bell turned her attention then toward another officer. She repeatedly yelled at that officer not to touch her. And because she was ignoring commands to move and to leave, several officers then were using their batons and they were pushing her towards the exit. So at one point, Bell repeatedly jabbed her elbow into an officer's chest and she said, quote, "Fucking pieces of shit." So her verbal attacks and her resistance continued. She was, moving towards the door, but not that quickly. Another officer then pushed her towards the exit. She turned around and she shoved her shoulder into his body. And then she grabbed his baton with her other hand. She pulled it toward her, almost like she was trying to take it away from him. And she held onto it for almost 10 seconds. She continued to resist the police. She did this all the way out the door. She flips them off again. That wasn't the end of her reign of terror, though. She gets outside. She goes over to the north lawn, and she joins in an attack on the press. So Bell, you guys will probably remember this because I shared photos in her arrest video. She goes up to a female reporter and she either tries to grab this woman or she pushes her. It's kind of unclear. And then this man steps in. He tries to stop this assault. So Bell raises her hand towards this man and he swats it away. She then tries to kick this man. Then another woman tries to intervene and Bell tried to punch and kick that woman as well. She is a menace. She is a total menace. And check this out. I just thought this was funny. Her phone case had an image on it of Donald Trump as Rocky. I know you guys have seen these photos before. I mean, seriously, Trump. When the guy was 25 years old, he was a little soft doughboy. So just get over it. These people are so delusional. So anyway, Bell was arrested on December 7th of 2023, and she was charged with assaulting officers, civil disorder, entering a restricted building or grounds, 2 counts of disorderly conduct, and parading or demonstrating in a Capitol building. In July of 2024, Bell pleaded guilty to the assault charge, so she faced up to 8 years in prison, 3 years of probation, and $250,000 in fines. However, the government requested only 27 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and $2,000 in restitution. And as I've said before, I've seen this again and again. If this was a man, they would be asking for more time. They have consistently just asked for ridiculously low sentences when it comes to women compared to the men for the same exact things. So anyway, and then they also asked for a fine for her, but they didn't specify an amount. Sadly, I should mention Officer Smith, the one that she yelled at to get a real job. He was one of the 4 officers who committed suicide. So he took his life 9 days after the Capitol attack. Smith had suffered a traumatic brain injury because of Trump's terrorists, so his death was determined to be in the line of duty. And his widow, she spoke at Bell's sentencing hearing. She asked the judge to give this woman a harsh sentence, and Officer Smith's wife told the court, quote, "My husband died protecting democracy itself. Then she also said that Bell chose to, quote, assault and berate police who, like my husband, held very real jobs that got 4 of them killed and hundreds injured. And because of Dana Bell, she said, my husband didn't get the chance to keep serving as a police officer. At 35, instead of becoming a mother, I became a widow. Now, to be clear, Bell was not involved in Smith's injuries, but, of course, she added to the numbers of the mob, which allowed for his assault. So as Smith's widow was completing her statement to the court, Bell apparently mouthed, I'm sorry, 2 times. And then Bell got up to speak as well, and she said, quote, it was my fault, it was my choice. And she apologized to the government, to U.S. taxpayers, also to the officers. Then she turned and she actually apologized to Smith's widow out loud. So U.S. District Judge Timothy Kelly presided over Bell's case, and he ended up sentencing her to only 17 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and $2,000 in restitution. So obviously nowhere near enough, in my opinion. This woman got physical with multiple officers, members of the press, whoever else those other people were. I mean, she was just completely out of control. She deserved every single bit of the sentence that the government asked for. This was weak, but, this is one of the weak judges. So I wouldn't expect any different from him. And like I said, the women, for some reason, they've been getting off way easier. So I will let you know when I hear any more. I mean, the good news is, as I always say, she's not going to be voting for Trump this year. She will be in prison. And was it worth it? She says, her attorney says, I should say, that in their memo to the judge, that she was fooled by Trump, that she has been going to counseling, and she no longer believes that the election was stolen. Let's hope that's true. I am not buying it because I've been fooled by these people before. So anyway, I'll let you know if I hear any more. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. Please like, please share, and subscribe. Please donate if you can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.